Hi, folks. How are you doing today? Hope you're all great and having a good time. Uh, it's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Today we're doing a special program, special broadcast, and it's in honor of the Nelson Mandela Day. It's actually tomorrow, but we decided to, participate, because some of our good friends, the Youth for Human Rights, are actually hosting this event today. So we're going to be broadcasting their show for them today on our platform as a sign of our support for them, and we hope you all enjoy it. And
Ethan, are you there?
hello, how are you, Margaret?
I'm here, yes, thank you.
Would you like to say anything at all?
No, because I don't have so I will just listen.
All right, dear.
Thank you.
Okay,
Hi,
we
everybody.
can talk later.
Hi, you're live.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first United for Human Rights event in celebration of Nelson Mandela. set the scene and gave you all something to think about on the history of human rights, and I think you can
So hi,
all the
we've
work
been
of
having
that
some
that you've seen
technical
over the last few
issues.
months.
We're hoping to be able to bring
We
this
still have
to
quite a
you
little way
live.
to go before
So
human rights are a
hopefully
fact,
what we'll
and
do is
people are
we'll do a
applying them
replay
to
and
each other.
rebroadcast.
So
We don't understand what the technical
I
issues are
welcome
here, but it happens to
any
do
new
with the audio.
people that's come on.
So we'll
I
get back
see,
to you
Kieran's
ASAP.
there. Good evening, Kieran.
Thank you.
Go over a little bit. She is a Nigerian Irish TV
So we're giving it a try
personality,
again. Let's see
broadcaster,
how this
advocate for
pans out
women's
now.
rights and youth issues. She hosted Nigeria's #1 television talk show and became Ireland's first Black councillor, female councillor, that is. In June of this year, she was appointed a peace commissioner for Meath County Council. So we are very, very happy to welcome Yemi Adenuga. Hello, Yemi. Can you?
Hello, Margaret. Yeah.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you very much, Margaret.
Yes, we're very much looking forward to hearing what you have to say this evening.
Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be here. I just want to thank you all so much for having me here, and to Linda for pulling every string to ensure that I was here today. She's amazing, but thank you all so much. I'm delighted to be here, and I mean to join the celebration of an amazing man who literally took the world by storm. I mean, even when you ask a child today who Nelson Mandela is, a child would have heard of Nelson Mandela. They are people who have passed over years, and sometimes you ask for their names and people don't remember and they're wondering who was that person. But even without saying Mandela, when you say Nelson, immediately the thing that strikes you is Nelson Mandela. That's the level, the power of the legacy that this man left behind. And really, what I want to talk about today, I know that there's going to be talk about human rights and all that, and I'll leave that to Sophia to do justice to it. But you know, what I'm going to talk about is the man himself, the man Nelson Mandela, how he impacted the world, the things he did, and how you and I, every single person who's listening here today, how you also have a role to play in impacting the world. You don't need to be as gigantic or ginormous as Nelson Mandela, because even when he started off, he wasn't. He didn't set out to be a global phenomenon. He just wanted to bring about a change in a way that he understood best to do. And so it is his works that eventually propelled him to global stardom. And so every single person who's watching today can be the change that we're talking about. It's not enough to have conversations about these things, but it's about what each person does within the confines of their office, their room, their estate, their friendship circle, whatever you want to call it. What do you do to bring about the change? Or are you one of those who sits on the fence and is constantly complaining? Well, if you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. There's no in between. So you're either helping to solve the problem by your actions or your thoughts and your speech and everything that you do, or you're just complaining, which means you're part of the problem. So I wanted to answer that. And I remember I was privileged. I call it a privilege and an honor. I was privileged to meet Mandela twice before he died. And for me, I think those two moments were moments of great transformation in my life. I remember the first time I had heard of him, it was when I heard about his death. I first remembered when I met him. I first saw him back in Nigeria, in Kaduna State of Nigeria, that's northern Nigeria, when he had visited the country shortly after its release in 1919. And then 8 years later, I was so honored and highly privileged, and I was overwhelmed to have met him in person, face to face. So the first encounter was, he was on stage. I was one of the members of the audience, and we were looking at him live on stage when he visited the north of Nigeria, Kaduna. That experience for me has lived with me ever, because when he was leaving and people were trooping out of the stadium, there was so much chaos. I lost the slippers. I walked home with one leg of slipper, and I remember that this slipper, I kept it, and I always remember Mandela for years to come. So a couple of years down the line, 8 years after that first encounter, I was Nigerian coordinator for the Choral African Music Awards, which used to hold in Sun City in South Africa. And on one of those occasions at the awards, Mandela and Michael Jackson were the special guest of honor. And that was the time I met both of them face to face. And there he was, sitting in front of me. I mean, I had the opportunity to be close to him because I was coordinator for Western Africa for that event. The awe around him was just incredible. It was magical. I was in awe. And he shook my hands. My husband took pictures. We reversed the roles, and I took pictures. And I tell you, I didn't wash my hands all day that day. You know, the man himself was an enigma. You know, he left a huge legacy. He was what many had called an anti-apartheid revolutionary and political leader, a philanthropist, and he served as president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first black head of state. I mean, that counts for something. The first black head of state. And some would feel some kind of connection to him in that regard. And he was first elected in a fully representative democratic election. His government at the time focused on dismantling the legacy of apartheid and tackling institutional racism. You know, so imagine one man focusing on one specific thing and tackling it for his regime, ensuring that everyone tried to fall in line with what the goal of that regime was. And he did do a fantastic job of that. He understood the power and the importance of freedom. And in getting that, he had to help people understand what their role was in ensuring that happened. Yes, we all know that he was arrested and he was imprisoned in 1962, I believe, and subsequently he was sentenced to life imprisonment. So he did pay a price for his actions. And what does that say? That sometimes when you're trying to fight for something, it's never smooth sailing. There's so many people who are out there today fighting racism in Ireland, calling it out on a daily basis, and you know, they get the slack all across social media, you know, physically, people come at them. But you know what? What does that say to you? It means you're doing something good. It means you're doing something that people are too afraid to touch. It means you're doing something that people know needs to change, but they're afraid to change it. Or perhaps they don't know how to change it. And so I'm saying today that if you have the answer, don't be afraid to step forward with the answer. I'll tell you something that kind of worries me, and it's something that happened recently. So before the coalition in Ireland, we had the past government, the Minister of Justice had put together a 16-man committee to look into the National Action Plan Against Racism. And for me, okay, yeah, so there were issues with that, but the biggest challenge for me was they were given the best part of a whole year to plan, to put together a national action plan. And I'm sitting there thinking, what are they planning in 1 year? The realities are there. We've heard the shared experiences. People have talked about what they're going through. We have heard these things over and over again over the last few months. And people's experiences from years have come to the light. So what are we planning for an entire year? I think that committee should be going into action with some of the consultations that had happened in times past. And so perhaps just sitting and planning is not what some people should be doing. Maybe knowing what to do is what we should start doing. And on the back of that, about 2 weeks ago, I put forward a motion in my county of move. I mean, while the planning is going on for a year, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. I do have challenges and I have problems with the way the entire thing is set up. However, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to do what I think is right. And so I put forward a motion in my county where I have jurisdiction, asking that my county council openly stands up against racism and lead a campaign for saying in the wake of the ongoing global fight against racism and growing support for it. And I ask that we develop as a county materials, whether it's audiovisual, whether it's print, to educate and inform people about racism in our community, about the importance of diversity and inclusion, and the need for us to educate ourselves. We should be ready, first of all, to admit that we don't know. If we're going to receive an education, we have to be willing to unlearn and relearn. You can't educate a person who thinks they know already. And so for everyone who's watching, I'm saying, do you really, genuinely, honestly, truly know the issues? Or is it what you think you know? So it's about allowing ourselves to open up our minds and listen and learn. It's not just migrants, it's migrants and indigents. We all have a lot to learn because there's a lot we don't know. And when we open our minds to learning, we see the realities on ground. We see young people who have for years suffered, acts of racism. We see mothers who have had to fight for their children in schools because the children come home every single day crying from backhanded comments that are given, or even direct attacks at them, and laughs at them by teachers who are supposed to be authorities in school. Some people still don't recognize that these things are real, and I'm at the stage where I'm shocked if I hear somebody saying, "Oh, but does that really happen?" So that's that spot where you need to stop there and pause, and it means I actually don't know. I need to know. And at the same time, for those who know, who are teaching, who are sharing, who are educating, people like those of us who are here on this forum, the how we teach is important. There's this talk about you can't force a horse, you can force a horse to the stream, but you can't force it to drink. And so when we want to show people the reality on ground, the how we show it is very important. First, when we're honest with ourselves that we don't know, then we can accept that we need to know. And then ask, what do we need to know? Whatever we need to know, some people already know. We have to be humble enough to learn it and then to be able to take it in. No one is born to hate. This is one of the things Nelson Mandela used to say. No one is born to hate another person because of the color of their skin or their background or their religion. People must learn. Yeah, they learn to hate. They must learn it. It's not an inbuilt thing. So if anybody hates, they learn to do it. And if they can learn to hate, then they can be taught to love. Love comes more naturally, and it comes naturally to human. It comes to the heart, very, very naturally. And so in teaching, in sharing, we do it with love as well, so people can be receptive. I always ask this question in whatever it is I am doing. What is the goal? What is the goal? The goal for what we're doing where racism is concerned in a country like Ireland is to ensure that people wake up to the consciousness that our laws change, that the system that has enabled racism over years, that this system changes, that the system itself is perhaps even demolished and rebuilt again, and it changes. And getting that to happen, there are many ways to kill a cat. The bottom line is for the cat to die. So how we get that to happen is something we must work on, and we have to accept that we play a key role in ensuring that that in our workplaces, Ireland stands as one of the worst countries in Europe that has a high degree of workplace racism. We must accept that fact. And so we thank the man, a global leader like Nelson Mandela, who's led the way in leadership. I thank him for passing this way, for passing my way. I thank him for being there in my lifetime, for making Africa proud, for making us proud, for giving hope, real hope, and for showing us the way to true freedom through the path of leadership. And this path we must follow. He brought about changes through the love he shared, through helping people open up to receiving love. And if we're talking about him today, if we're sharing of the work he's done today, we must also talk about how he did it. And the how we did it is the way we can imbibe in doing what we want to do. I know that my time is fast spent. It was a really short one that you wanted me to do. But my message really is today, don't just talk about Nelson Mandela as a great man who did great things. Also speak of him as to how he did the things and how you can be that change that you want to see. Never mind those who are hard-hearted. They say that one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. Well, I believe that in this age and time, you can take out that one bad apple and you will have a basket full of great apples. So don't be that one bad apple. If that one bad apple persists and is there, well, excuse them and work with the great apples that you have. Let's recognize those who are doing incredible things to enable this change that we're seeking. They are the allies that are readily around. And then those are the allies that we need. Let's ask them to come on board so we can all bring about this change. And let's stop talking. Let's not do it. It's time for action. No more strategies that sit on the shelf and don't see the light of day. If you know what to do, please do. In Meath, I am proud to say that in County Meath, we're leading the way in actions that will ensure that the people of Meath are educated and informed on issues of race and racism. We have diversity, we're building diversity ambassadors who will be educated and who will go into schools and go into workplaces in Meath to educate people on issues of racism. And then we're working on campaigns that will ensure every single person in Meath wakes up to this reality and begins to act to ensure that we stamp out racism in Meath. So we're asking every other county to join us. Plans can go on in other places, but we're acting in Meath. And that's what we all must do. Stop talking, start acting. Thank you.
Well, that was absolutely brilliant. Fantastic. I want you to obviously stay with us a little bit and have a look at some of the materials that we have for you tonight. We're going to go into a short 1-minute video here to show you what kind of programs that we have been developing here from the Church of Scientology's National Affairs Office in Ireland. And Jerry is going to be explaining to you the importance of the education program that we're doing. So I think you're very spot on. Education has to be a primary concern if we're going to eventually end racism and discrimination. So I think your program is just amazing. I can't wait to see it get off the ground. And I know with you behind it, it's going to be the most incredible watch this space. So I think it's going to go well. So let's just take you to a very short video. This is the very first article of the Declaration of Human Rights. So here we go.
Can you tell which of these children was not born free? Can you tell which of these children was not born equal? Can you tell which of these children does not deserve to be treated with dignity? We can't either. Human right number 1. We're all born free and equal. human rights? Find out at youthforhumanrights.org.
All right, so that's our very first Article 1, which is we are all born free and equal. And of course, that is the subject of our event this evening. So I'm going to now introduce Jerry Allred to speak. We have discovered that Princess Pamela is going to be here in the next 10 minutes or so. So we'll be hearing from her maybe after Jerry. And we'll, I'm sure, have a very robust and lively conversation with Princess. And then, of course, we'll be opening the floor up for questions afterwards, okay? All right, so Jerry is our social reform director here at the National Affairs Office. He oversees 3 of the church's humanitarian programs. That is the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, the Drug-Free World program, and the United for Human Rights, which of course also involves the Youth for Human Rights program. What is little known is that Jerry also comes from Atlanta, Georgia, and this is the home of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. So we're going to welcome Jerry Allred.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. And I mean, I'm sure it's already off the ground, your project. All right, so I have a question. So how do we make human rights a fact? We all have our own thoughts and ideas. That's what makes us unique and who we are. It's all our individuality, our personality. It is true for each man, woman, and child. We are the human race, the human species called mankind. The human race is comprised of all men, all women, and all children. And we are all born free and equal. We have inalienable rights. These are not privileges, but rights. They are human rights. So why are human rights not taught to each and every one of us from a very early age? Go out to the streets, ask anyone, what are their human rights? Do you know them? And even fewer know how to exercise them. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was 2 years in its formation, adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on 10 December 1948. It was considered the foundation of international human rights law and inspired by a rich body of legally binding international human rights treaties. It universally represents basic human rights and fundamental freedoms belonging to us all, and that we are all born free and equal. The United Nations General Assembly proposed that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I'll quote, be disseminated, displayed, read, and expounded principally in schools and other educational institutions without distinction based on the political status of countries or territories, end of quote. Now, L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, said this about the Declaration. Very few governments have implemented any part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. These governments have not grasped that their very survival depends utterly upon adopting such reforms and thus giving their people a cause, a civilization worth supporting, worth their patriotism. To that end, the Church of Scientology's United for Human Rights program was born, and it spearheaded the global Youth for Human Rights movement founded in 2001. Its purpose, to make human rights a fact, and to raise global awareness and respect for human rights by broadly educating the peoples of Earth, while simultaneously persuading governments to uphold the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. As a global movement, we have accomplished much. United for Human Rights is now partnered with over 6,000 organizations and government agencies worldwide. 100 million children are reached each year by the Human Rights Program through distribution of materials, petitions, and public services announcements. 500,000 students empowered with human rights education. 12,000 schools worldwide have implemented the Youth of Human Rights program, while 21,000 are using the materials. In Ireland, over 120 schools have received Youth for Human Rights talks, while hundreds more have received materials through our online ordering system. The Youth for Human Rights website provides educators with everything they need to educate their students. It is a platform for free online courses, a virtual classroom for teachers and students, a human rights curriculum, an education package for teachers, and a 9-point program to help educators get started, and it's all free of charge. Anyone interested in using the materials and educating children can use the website to order materials or download whatever they need to get started in educating our youth. While we have made inroads, there is much more to do. Ireland's youth needs our help. It needs a Youth for Human Rights ambassador that will lead the way. And the position is open. The next speaker has been a Youth for Human Rights ambassador for many years and will be speaking on her adventures. I would like to finish with a quote from Nelson Mandela when he said, "Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world." End of quote. And so, let's start.
Thank you, Jerry. That was great.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. So we have another little clip of the article 2, which is "Don't Discriminate." So let's have a look at this one.
Joe. Steven. There. I'll take him right there.
All right, so there we are. So now what I would like to do is I would like to invite our youth ambassador, Sophia Khalid. Basically, she's a British-born Muslim. She joined the Youth for Human Rights movement back in 2012. She was already practicing law at university, and she got her degree. And then after working with the Youth for Human Rights program in the UK, she went on to get her master's degree, and we're very happy to have her visiting us tonight. She's traveled all the way from Belfast, where she's living currently with her new husband, I have to say. So congratulations, Sophia. So let's have Sophia tell us what it's like to be working as a youth, educating people on human rights in the UK. So take it away, Sophia.
Thank you, Margaret. Hi, everybody. So for me, it's always bittersweet to talk at these events. It's sweet because I love to hear everybody's experiences and I love to share my own. But then on the other hand, it always feels like we're still here talking about the same things all the time. I was recently at the Black Lives Matter protest in Belfast city centre, and I felt an overwhelming feeling of wow, like it was amazing to see everybody out there. But then I remember that same evening, I went home and I went onto social media and I saw double the amount of racism that I would usually see online. And it was just so disheartening. But at the same time, I do feel like progress is currently being made. And we are now at a time where the conversation is starting and people are talking a lot more about this. So I am hopeful things are changing. As Margaret said, I was born in the UK and I've lived all my life in the UK. I love most things about the country. I love all the rights and freedoms we have. For me, it's always been home, but I would say that it wasn't always easy growing up in the UK, and it was a struggle. I suffered from a big identity crisis, I would say. I was always in the minority. So whether that was at school, in the classroom, I was the only person of colour usually, or one of a few people of colour, or whether that was in my friendship group, I was usually the only Muslim. So I always felt very different. And when you're younger, one thing you always want to do is fit in. I think as you get older, you don't care so much about fitting in. But when you're younger, all you ever want to do is fit in. You never want to draw attention to yourself. So for me, I tried to hide a lot of things about myself. So I used to hide my culture. I used to hate like my skin colour, these kind of things. I was victim to racism growing up, and one particular instance that I will never forget was when I was in secondary school. I think I was about 10 or 11, maybe 12, and I was with a friend of mine, and I remember there was another group of Asians that I think just walked past us, and she made a comment using some expletives and then the racist P word that I'm not going to use to describe them. Now, they were the same as me, but the only difference was I was with her. So she made these comments about the other people, and then she looked at me and then she said, "Not you though, you're all right, like you're one of us," basically. And at the time, I was quite young, and I remember thinking like, phew, like she didn't mean me, like I'm okay. And I never spoke up about it because that wasn't me. I was an extremely shy young person. I lacked confidence, and I always felt very inferior to everybody else. And I think that's something that a lot of people go through who are perhaps like me, who do feel like they never truly belong. So this is how I spent most of my childhood and teenage years, just never feeling like I belonged anywhere. And things changed, I would say, at the age of 21, and two things had a profound effect on my life. The first one was travelling. At 21, I travelled alone to China, and my life changed, and it was just amazing to see how different people live, also how I could cope in a situation on my own. It gave me such a big sense of confidence, and also just looking at different cultures, seeing different cultures and how they live, it made me appreciate my own culture. The second thing that changed my life was learning about human rights. Now, growing up, I knew absolutely nothing about human rights. I probably heard the expression, but I just didn't know what it meant. And I came across, I don't even know how I came across it, but I came across Youth for Human Rights, and I then applied to become a youth delegate. I read up on loads of that material, and I remember thinking, if only I had known something so basic as Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that we are all born free and equal. If only this was something I'd known when I was growing up, I think my life would have been like just very, very different to how it was. And I know it's something quite basic, but when you're a kid, when you're a child, sometimes you just need that reassurance that you are, like, you've got no need to feel ashamed for being different. So the picture now, this shows me, it's a bit like a Where's Wally, I don't know if you can see me, but this is made it one of the human rights summits. Now, when I attended the Human Rights Summit, my life changed. It was absolutely amazing. I've never been in an environment where people were so just motivated to talk about human rights, to share what they were doing. I met Dr. Mary Shuttleworth, who's in this picture, and I feel like she's one of the first people that believed in me before I believed in myself. And it was just to have her reassuring me, and then meeting the other young people, it was amazing. It gave me so much confidence, and it gave me like a second family as well, I would say. Just meeting people from all around the world, learning about their cultures as well. It gave me so much confidence. And then, so after the first year, I actually went on to continue being a human rights ambassador. I continued attending the summits, and some of the work I did as a human rights ambassador was that I delivered workshops in my own primary school, and then other schools in my city, which is Stoke-on-Trent, which they call the Brexit capital. So it's a city in England, not one of the best. So I delivered human rights workshops, just because I never want another child to struggle how I struggled and to feel like they don't fit in. So Yemi, when you were saying about the workshops, it's so it's life-changing for young people, so you should definitely do it, and I think you'll do amazing. I found the workshops really good. I got amazing feedback from the teachers, from the schools, from the young people, and I could see changes, which was amazing. As a human rights ambassador, I also spoke at the United Nations in New York 2 times, which was amazing. I spoke at the House of Lords in London, again, which was amazing, but I was really shy because I had such a common Stoke accent, and I thought everyone would be really posh. And then I did some video campaigns that went viral online. As Margaret said, I did a Master's in Human Rights. I was then published in the Young Human Rights Lawyers Journal, and quite recently I was nominated for an Asian Woman of Achievement Award, which was, for me, just, I couldn't believe it, because for me it felt like little Sophia, who always thought that she would never become anything, who would never speak up, who would never raise her voice, who would, just take the racism, and was finally doing something, and she was finally achieving something, and she was finally speaking out, and also helping other people know about their human rights. So for me, it was really life-changing. And all that I would leave you with this evening is just to say that I'm hopeful that there are going to be changes, and I think we have a responsibility to educate as many people as we can. And it doesn't mean in a formal sense, it could just be, for example, talking about it and starting a conversation, like sending the video we watched at the beginning. I've watched that video so many times and it still makes me so emotional. I always get a tear in my eye just watching it again. But yeah, I think we've got a lot of power, even though we may think we're small, and we should just keep spreading the message. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely. Absolutely brilliant. Anyway, we're going to definitely be asking you a few questions in a moment, and open the floor up. I'm sitting here, I've got lots of questions to ask yourself and lots of questions to ask Yemi, and I think everybody can see that if we have your kind of impetus as a youth in your own community, then things will start to change, because it is the change that we want to be. It's, inherent with all of us, and I think that's very important. So hang tight. I think we have another short video, another minute video. And then we have Princess Pamela that's going to be joining us, and she can tell us about her adventures. All right, so roll the video.
I'm Chinese.
I am Russian. I am East African.
I'm Canadian.
I am Filipino.
I am Irish.
I am Bulgarian. Korean. I am American.
I am Brazilian.
Italian.
I'm British.
Swedish. French.
I'm Israeli.
We are mankind.
All right, excellent. So we now have our final speaker, and then we're going to open the floor up. I want to introduce somebody that's basically has not been a stranger to our National Affairs Office here. She's been a friend of ours since we opened in 2016. She is a journalist, an author, a newspaper columnist. She's a public relations consultant and TV presenter. She is vibrant, colorful, creative, and youthful. She has a passion to help the youth of Ireland. So let's please welcome Princess Pamela Toyin.
Unmute.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lady Margaret. I'm sorry, I'm just joining in after I got the call from Linda earlier today. I thought she was going to call me for a follow-up. I wasn't sure it was going to happen again, so I was actually out when I saw her message. And I just quickly came back home. So, like I promised, I said I was going to read a poem. And this poem is from a gentleman, a young student in Nigeria. Now, I have a number of students in Nigeria that I mentor. I have a WhatsApp group of hundreds and hundreds of them. And I just try to encourage them because they are actually struggling when it comes to the issue of human rights in Nigeria. So there's this particular one. He is in the university and he's studying arts and he's very good, he's very poetic. So I said, well, Nelson Mandela Day comes up soon. I want you to do something, I want you to write something. And like I discussed with you guys earlier, I said I was going to read his poem to encourage him to project his work. But generally in Nigeria, Human Rights International has actually tried to use education to raise the bar. Nigeria is a country of tremendous potential, but grave human rights situations. So it is a major issue in Nigeria. I will come back to that in the course of time, but I'll just want to read Ibrahim's poem because I promised him that I was going to get this done as soon as I start to speak. So I have two, and they are very short, so it's not going to take too much time. One of them actually is about who Mandela is and what he stands for. And the second one is about my color. Pigmentation is an issue around here. And we know that, all over the world, you are judged both by your color before the content that comes out of you. So I'll do the one on Mandela first because we are celebrating Mandela today. So Ibrahim Latif, that is his name, is a student of University of Ife, formerly University of Ife, but now Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, one of the best universities in Nigeria. The title is Africa Once Had a King. Africa once had Nelson Mandela of Umtata, a freedom fighter who glowed like the sunrise of the early dawn, beyond bars and prison of Portsmouth, a giant whose face wore the exact color of the stunning Sahara, a fearless hero at the battlefield of tormenting oppressions, the liberator of the South, whose name formed the conspicuous crests and the everlasting embroidery on the frame of history. All Africa once had a king, whose name traversed beyond the skies with lasting legacies that stand like astonishing pyramids in Egypt, the Madiba of Mbezo, the Ruihala of Soweto. Africa once had a king. Thank you. That's so the second one is my color. My color is never the replica of a deadly Lucifer. My color is not of the duplicate of a weird darkness. My color is not a description or an eyed vomit, not of a violent monster with a heart of stone. I am only black and golden, like a peaceful light, carrying galaxies of stars. I'm only representing the image version painted all over me by a similar artist, by Latif Ibrahim. Thank you.
Wow. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I would like to open the floor for some questions. I'd like to start by asking Yemi a question, if I may. Yemi, you talk about education. Is it possible to get that put into the curriculum at a sort of very early age, where they start learning their human rights from a very early age? And is this something that you definitely want to start promoting for Meath children and around the rest of Ireland, or what is the plan on that?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, there was a petition online by two young ladies who were asking for modules and subjects on race and diversity and human rights to be in the curriculums in schools. And it was a petition that I had signed up to because I thought it was important. So yes, it's something that I would hope would be in the curriculum. And I've had people come to me and say, but why must you put that in the curriculum? Is it that important? Well, it shows the reason. I mean, my straight answer to one person who asked me directly was, actually, that question is the very reason why we need it in the curriculum. If you would ask me that question in the Sagen time, that's the very reason we need it. So while we're waiting for all that to happen, on my part, in a practical term, I spoke earlier on about having diversity ambassadors in Meath. And that would be one of their roles, to work within schools and organizations. There's so many things that they're going to be doing, and I'm very super excited about them. So one of them would be to work with young people, pupils in school, in workshops. These are things that I would have done a couple of years ago, going to secondary schools and primary schools in Meath and speak on diversity and inclusion in schools. And they were always very welcomed. And I remember one particular occasion, one of the principals of one of the schools had asked me if I would include the topic of bullying in my talks, and I did. And you should have seen the feedback from the young people. So the schools wanted, but within the confines of the law, where our educational system is concerned, there are limits to what they can allow within the schools. And so we would work within the confines of those and bring talks that really, they're simple, right? There's so much that you can give to children. So the talks we're going to be having through our diversity ambassadors who, by the way, will be educated through training that will be certified, right? And will happen within Meath. And we encourage other counties who want to come and even take part in those trainings. They're welcome to come. So they will be delivering talks to students in schools in Meath. And there's simple issues on recognizing difference, appreciating difference. These are just examples, simple stuff. Appreciating difference, making it cool to have a friend from another country. I remember when I was growing up, right? I used to have pen pals. I was in Nigeria, I was just about 9, and I had pen pals from England. At that age of 9, I'd never been to England at 9, but I had friends from England. And my first trip to England as a teenager, I kept thinking, oh goodness, I must look for my friends in England because we've been writing to each other for years. Now, when eventually these kids understand and learn the importance of having friends from other cultures, we help them see how cool it is. It's not for them to think it's bad or to feel terrible that their friends within their circle are from other cultures, which is the picture that is being painted for kids these days. Or why are you moving with that black kid? Or why is that black kid always playing football with you? That's a negative. Instead, we reverse it and help them unlearn and relearn that it is so super cool to have a friend from another country. You don't need to have them as pen pals from another world. They're right in front of you. And if you look at your friend's circle, your friendship circle, you should be able to say, I have friends from at least 4 countries. And I know stuff from those 4 countries. We have to make those cool for children to appreciate it. And that's part of what we're going to be doing. And that's how you educate young people. Once you have them, then you can educate them. Right? So definitely that's work that will be happening in Meath. And then we will work with businesses, organizations, companies in Meath. There's been questions about perhaps having a quota system within the country in our workplaces where companies have to have a certain percentage of their workforce as diverse. Well, that's all still talks. And in Meath, we're looking at the possibility of having our businesses as stakeholders within this campaign that we're running. So if they're stakeholders, they come to the table and we have a conversation. What percentage of your workforce can possibly be diverse? What can we agree at? We have an agreement and there's little talk, plenty of action. And then we put that into practice. So watch out, those are the things that are going to be happening. And they've started happening already, I have to say. But there will be more of it and you'll definitely see more of it.
Yes, I mean, we've definitely experienced, we've gone out and we've, done the drill, if you like, of talking to the different people, do you know your human rights? Can you list out any of your human rights? And you get this sort of blank look as if to say, well, I should know them, but I don't. So there is definitely a need. And I think
there is a need. There definitely is a need.
Yes.
We know there's a need.
Yes.
That's the reality. We know there's a need. But one thing I've discovered as well is we don't know how to handle it. And we're not admitting that we don't know how to handle it. We just keep dancing around in circles.
Yes.
Right? And it's easy, so much easier to pass the ball onto somebody else and blame somebody else for the failure.
Yes.
Now, enough of that. If we know how to do it, let's do it. Let's stop talking. An
interesting point is that when I think there's about 192 countries right now are signed on to the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, but they're not, and they were, as Jerry pointed out in his speech, they were the very basic of international law, yet they're not actually laws in every country. It's even though we have all these countries, including Ireland, signed on to the declaration, and it would be, I think, very important to have those 30 rights actually sort of mandated into law if that's the right thing to do. And then, we get them into the curriculum at a very early age so that, children, they not only know their human rights, but they know how to access places of where to go. in all honesty, I didn't even know human rights. You know, what Sophia was saying is true for me, you know, and I'm an oldie. I was born in 1949, so that tells you what age I am right there. But
Hello, Grandma.
but I didn't even know what human rights were until very late on in my life. And, you know, I've obviously been working in the field now for over 35 years, but at the time, I was staggered that I didn't know about this. And you learn what's going on around the world when you start looking and being willing to see what's going on. So yes, so we want to be able to be part of that and share that and help, obviously, the communities here. We have the materials. They are available to any individual that wants to avail themselves. They just have to go on the website, order them, and they'll be sent to them, you know, unconditionally. And then they can get started. And we can even train, educate people. I know that I think Sophia, I think, got some help with, you know, how to do the lectures or the talks in school. I know Jerry has done talks in schools here, and he can tell you a little bit about some of the amazing response from the kids that you get when they learn something, you know, about their human rights. It's really beautiful to see, very beautiful. So maybe, Jerry, you can give a story very quickly on...
Yeah. So I guess one of the stories I could tell is people say, you've probably heard this before, the proof is in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
So when you go into schools and you talk to kids about their human rights and you get them to engage in how they could actually be proactive in helping someone that their rights are being violated, they start to wake up and come alive. And the teachers actually, they're not over there grading tests and writing notes. They're actually listening to what you're saying. And with the audiovisual of Youth for Human Rights, it just engages with the children like very strongly. And you know it's doing a good job because you get asked to come back to the same school again. If it didn't, then you wouldn't be back doing that again. Yeah. So I've been up in the north of Ireland, and I had 150 kids, 5 classes, one right after the other, graduating in age. And I think the teachers had a blast just watching the kids get into solving, like, well, if you see someone being discriminated against, what could you do? You know, and I put them into groups and I'd say, so you work out what you could do, give me the scenario, and they would do it. And they would tell me. And it's like newfound knowledge for them. So I guess that would be one of the bright points that I could talk about. And I'm sure that Sophia is seeing similar type things. So that's the story.
All right, has anybody got anything to add to that? Sophia, do you want to tell us anything that you've had in experiences individually?
Like Jerry was saying with the teachers, like they will sit in a corner, but you can see that they are interacting with the session as well, and they're just loving it as well. I, like the oldest, so I usually go into primary schools, the oldest year group I did was year 8. And I was a bit worried because I was thinking, like, year 8s, sometimes they're a bit more like the cool kids. They might not be interested in learning, but they really did. So they loved it. For me, the video is so good. The kids really get engaged with that. And I think even adults get engaged with that. And even, like I said, I've seen it, I think, 100 times and I'm still engaged with that. So it's a really good video. And then, like I used to do workshops, so I'd do different things and break the sessions up. So I'd play games and activities, and then we do role plays. But the underlying message of everything was human rights education, and it is because some of the kids are quite young, so it's introducing them to the subject because like they've never come across it before. So it's just introducing them in a way that relates to them. And then also when you do learn about some of the rights, it is quite overwhelming because there are 30 rights. So I just used to focus on 4, which were that we all want free and equal, don't discriminate, freedom of expression, and that you have a responsibility. So if you do see anyone maybe who's, I don't know, being bullied in a school context, you do have a responsibility to stand up against the bullies. If someone sees that, for example. So yeah, I had a really good experience in schools.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So, Princess, do you have anything to say? Because I know you were talking the other day that you want to help some of the youth here in Ireland that were having particular difficulties in, that were born in Ireland, but are African descent, obviously. Do you want to share anything on that? Princess, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes.
I can hear you now. I didn't hear you before, it was breaking.
All right. So what I was saying is, you were sharing with me the other day, that you wanted to help the Nigerian youth that have been born in Ireland, that they have particular problems with fitting in because they consider this as their country, but they also have African descent. So do you want to share something on that? Because you were saying things that you wanted to do to help that particular culture.
Yes, well, first of all, for those of us who were born in Nigeria, for people in my generation, we believe a lot in our culture. And when you have children here, the parents, the Nigerian born parents, try to imbibe their culture in their children. The system here is quite different from back home. And you find out that at some point, these children get confused, especially when they are born here and they prefer to actually act like the normal Irish. Or we feel that because they are born by Nigerian parents, they should actually imbibe our culture. So you find out that that confusion, that line of confusion, is where they don't know where to. They feel they don't belong anywhere, especially because some of them, even though we're born here, are not accepted as such. And like when you talk about human rights, when you talk about discrimination, when you talk about people reacting to your pigmentation, they just feel that they are not fully accepted and they don't really belong to Nigeria, for instance.
All right.
I don't know if it's my end or your end, sorry, it just went off. So they don't really belong here. They don't really belong back home. When you take them home, they act strangely because they don't live there. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to interact in some cases. And when they are here, even though amongst themselves, they feel comfortable and they're relaxed and all that. But within the society, when they have to mix with others, sometimes they just feel that they are not totally welcomed. They feel that they're not totally accepted, if I can put it that way. Yeah. So I belong to an organization, the Finger Letting Network, and I am one of the executives. I'm actually in charge of youth and sports. So what we have decided to do now is to have series of webinars and deal with issues that not just migrant children, actually, not just youth, young adults, but series of issues that youth and young adults are actually facing, especially this pandemic season. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, and it is very obvious that things are not going to be the same again. So, a lot of youth are finding it difficult to cope with the situation, coupled with all the issues that were there before the pandemic. And then a lot of parents too are confused. A lot of parents too do not know what direction they should go and do not know how to guide these youth. So what we have decided to do is get experts in different fields and organize series of webinars to speak with them so that we can first of all create a balance. So if you're having issues with upskilling, if you're having issues with skill acquisition, if you're having issues with mental health, if you have issues with human rights, if you have different things. So we want to actually get the youth, get them into a conversation with their parents as well, so that even after the pandemic, they have a structure, a proper structure to their lives.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I think we can all agree that youth is definitely where it has to begin. It has to begin early. We have to begin with education because that's empowerment. And I think if we start, supporting Yemi and Sophia and Princess, we will be able to start a whole movement, hopefully here in Ireland, and get the youth involved. And I think, give them a real purpose and a goal to push human rights at every angle. And then I think we may start to see a big change in the racism and discrimination. And I think the events that have occurred, it's sad to say that it has brought this whole issue to light. So now we can hopefully move forward and see a much calmer future as we start to really get down and educate children.
Absolutely.
What I'd like to,
if I might just add something to what Princess had said there.
yes,
if that's okay.
yes,
Sure.
I mean, Princess is so right. There's a lot of confusion amongst migrant kids,
yes,
not knowing whether they're here. They don't know if they're here or they're here. And part of that confusion stems, as she rightly said, from how they're raised at home and what's happening in the outside world. And for them, it's that sense of belonging. Where do I belong? I'll use an example for kids from Africa. So they're thinking, am I African or am I Irish? And so nobody, not the society is not confirming that they're Irish. As a matter of fact, the society is telling them they're not Irish. That's a term that they use in Ireland, that they're Irish, which is quite derogatory. And the parents at home are trying to instill in them that African culture and reminding them where you come from. You're an African and all that bit. Now, here is one of the strategies that we've started using in WEAP. It's helping young migrant kids understand that actually they have an advantage that an African and an Irish doesn't have. They have a double advantage. They have an advantage of being dual nationality, which is not something that is common to everyone. And you see that as a positive rather than a negative. And they have the best of both worlds.
yes,
They can have the best of both worlds.
yes,
So, I mean, I'm a first generation migrant to Ireland. Simple things like people asking me, where are you from? Right? Some people might take offense. I don't. And I'll tell you why I don't take offense. Because I have discovered from unlearning and relearning that that's a typical Irish question. Your average Irishman would ask you that question. And in all honesty, it means no harm. He's just asking, where are you from? And in reality, migrants actually do ask other migrants that question. I see a typical Black person, I hear the accent, I know they're not Nigerian, and I'm like, oh, where are you from? You know, it's something that comes natural to us. However, when you flip that on its head and you meet a second generation, a third generation migrant, and you ask them the same question, now that's getting tricky because that generation knows nothing else but Ireland. They haven't been to Africa. They don't know what Africa looks like, save only going on holiday, which is probably 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then you ask them, where are they from? And then when they say, I'm from Navan, you ask them, no, where are you originally? That's not just being cheeky, that's an insult. And that's you right there telling them, without necessarily saying it directly, that they're not Irish. And that's where those kids get even more confused. It's like, why would they ask me where I'm originally from? I grew up here, I was born here. I have the accent. If you closed your eyes and you listen to a lot of migrant kids today, you wouldn't know they were black. You know, those who are black. Just close your eyes and you heard the accent. You would never be able to tell they were the color. The color, right? So why would we ask them? And these are the kind of educations we're talking about to help people understand. Now, I have found out that people don't necessarily, not everyone is racist. And this is the truth. This is from my experience. Some people just don't know how to ask the questions. They just ask the way they know how. And it turns out that they have hit the bad side of a person who just got the backhand of some other guy who was actually being racist. And so you find the average person who's still on the edge, pulls out the race card every time they get that kind of question, like, so are you being racist? So in helping us all understand, like I said before, there is a goal. The goal is to ensure that we all become more human. We become humane, that we first appreciate ourselves as human beings. That's when we can begin to appreciate the value we all bring to the table. I always say something. I am an encounter. Forget whether I'm black. It does not matter. My color doesn't define who I am. If you allow yourself to encounter me, then you get the benefit of what Yemi and Enuga brings to the table. But if you look at my color first, and then you put a barrier because you see my color, do you know what? That person is the loser because they never get the value that I bring to the table. And that's what we're saying, that everyone brings a value. Never mind where they come from. Enjoy the benefit of that value. See them as humans who've got something to offer, who bring something to the table. Ireland is so super blessed because we're one of the countries that has a huge diverse culture. But we don't know how to manage it yet. And that's what we must learn to do. We must also encourage our children. We must not forget that if we begin to segregate and tell migrant kids that they're not Irish, these migrant kids will grow up and they will marry your children, whether you like it or not, because you can't stop your children from falling in love. That's the reality of the natural phenomenon. You know, we don't know where their hearts are going. I'm not just thinking now, I'm thinking future. We must plan for the future. We must prepare our children with hearts that are able to embrace and encourage and support and be human. So when your daughter or your son comes home with a girl from a different culture, you don't faint because you're thinking, oh my Lord, how am I going to manage that? Instead, you turn around and say, Lord in heaven, we have a multicultural family. I am super proud of that. That's what we should work towards. And that's what we should start to teach our children. That's why we're sitting here. That's why Nelson Mandela was such a phenomenal man. Because he saw the good in everyone. Look, he had his faults. He was human. But the fact remains that when you talk about human rights today, when you talk about somebody who stood against racism in the world, when you talk about somebody who kept talking about humanity and the need for us to love and not to see color, Nelson Mandela ticks all the boxes. Number one. You're number one man. And he was black.
I loved it.
And he was number one.
Yes, and I loved what he said, you know, that when he was walking out of the gates, you know, of his imprisonment, that he knew that he had to walk out there without any hate whatsoever, even though he had been treated so inhumanely. So, I mean, it takes a great person or a great being to be able to think in terms like that, I think. but you know, it can be taught in everybody to think that way, and I think it has to be taught in everybody in that way. And I think you're absolutely right, you know. But I do have to say, I do like your color, and I do like your vibrant. I've had the pleasure to go to Africa twice. I've been to Sudan many times, and I've also been to Zimbabwe. And I think if I ever get born again, I think I'll go to Africa because it's so awful. I haven't been there yet, princess, but maybe you never know. I might get there soon. Okay. So I think we should probably end off there. I'm not quite sure how long we've had. I'd like to thank all our guests. Sophia, thank you very much for coming. Councillor Adenuga, brilliant speech. Thank you so much. Princess, as always, thank you very, very much. And I hope you've enjoyed it, Jerry, as well, Kieran, and hello, Miranda, how are you? That's peeking in behind there. And everybody else that's joined us live stream, I hope you've learned something and enjoyed the videos. Those materials, by the way, you can go to the Youth for Human Rights website. That's www.youthforhumanrights.ie for Ireland, or if you want to go to the big national one, you can go to .org, and you can absolutely order whatever materials you want. They will be sent to you with no obligation and free of charge if you want to get started. If anybody wants to learn how to be an ambassador or to become a Sophia for Ireland, you can definitely email us or get in touch with us, and we will help you. And same with Yemi, if anybody wants to work in me helping Yemi, of course, that's what we're looking for, because the youth are our future. Our future depends on you, and the future depends on how you create it. So we want to have, obviously, a very beautiful planet that is not going to have hate, racism, and discrimination as its core value. All right, so we can change that. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward.
I have one little point.
Yes, Jerry.
So, before we decided to do this event, I did a little bit of research on Mandela, and I found that the Irish loved Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
He, in fact, got to address the Oireachtas here in Ireland.
Yes.
He got an honorary law degree from Trinity University, and he called the Irish the original freedom fighters.
It's true.
So I think there's a possibility to tie these threads together and work toward pushing the Declaration of Human Rights.
Yes.
So.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good point. Did you know that people also say that the name Nelson is possibly an Irish name? And that it means son of a champion.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Wow. So there's lots of good things why he managed to get himself called that name, right? I think he talks about that as well in some of his books, you know. So yes, so I hope you've all enjoyed our first webinar, as they called. You have to understand it's a little bit new language for me, so I hope I didn't do too many errors or whatever. I'm still looking at all the little buttons that everybody's pushing, and I haven't figured them out yet. But hopefully I will have that all practiced by the next one, and I hope you'll join us again if we have another one soon. All right. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lady Margaret.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yemi, thank you. And Habib, who is doing the live streaming for us, who has really done an amazing job because we would never have done this without him at all. So thank you so much for all your help. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
And so it ends, but the celebrations are just starting. It's the Nelson Mandela Day, which is actually tomorrow. And we're all looking forward to it. Watch this short video and we'll be right back. Thank you. So, great evening with the folks from the Youth for Human Rights, .ie, standing for Ireland. And we hope you all enjoyed it. And we're going to be doing a replay so that, all the early parts of the show that we couldn't, get the audio because we had some technical difficulties. We're going to make sure we address that, get all that audio back, and then we're going to do a replay. So you can always watch it on any of the social handles of From a Radio, Facebook, YouTube particularly, and you can catch the entire gist there. Have a fantastic evening. Have a great weekend ahead. Don't forget to join us 8 o'clock on Sunday for our usual Just Banter episode. You all have a fantastic night. Good night.